Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I've lived in a pretty secluded area of Vermont all my life. There is a giant opening big enough for a field and 3 houses, each with a sizable yard front and back. But other than that, there is woodland all around. It probably doesn't count too much because there is a road that runs just quite close, but it is far enough away that you can't hear sirens when they go by. My house is in the middle of 2 hills, with an open field right next to it, and dense woods around both the field and the house. The field gets fairly long, however, sometimes to the point where it is above your head. Adjacent to this field, separated by a dense tree line and at the bottom of a hill, there is another field, which rarely gets cut, and in which some pine trees grow. Around that field, however, is a huge expanse of woods, approximately 30 miles 230 degrees around. There is a creek running around it, and a path leading through it. My story is from a good few years ago, when I was around 8 years old. My father still lived with me and my mother, and I used to take walks with him whenever the weather permitted. We usually walked around the 2 fields, and we created and cleared paths whenever we could. We also dug some trenches for water to travel through so that the paths did not flood too heavily. One day, me and my father were doing just that, clearing paths and clearing out a trench we had created just 3 weeks prior of leaves and sticks that were clogging it. It was getting rather dark, but we both had lanterns with us, so we could still get some work done. Eventually, my father got tired and asked if I wanted to stop for the day. I, as a youngling back then, told him I could keep going for a while more. He then told me that he was going to journey back and get some coffee and dinner, and asked if I wanted to come. I rejected, as I could get more done if I stayed. This was not too uncommon for me, as I tended to wander off in my spare time. We had also taken our beagle with us, who tended to either wander around or stay near me, but who only barked if she saw something, which in a sense comforted me, because she would have been able to alert me if something was near. Even so, it was dark, and there tended to be bears and coyotes prowling around, so I tried to work quickly so I could finish what I wanted to before I got too nervous. An hour or so passed, and I was just about done as my dog started barking. Turning toward her to see where she was barking, I noticed she was turned toward the creek. As I looked to where she was barking, I saw nothing. This was fairly abnormal, as every time she barked, it was at something in plain enough sight that I would be able to see it. So I was a bit uneasy. When I finished what I was doing, I turned to walk home. Around this time, I heard a low snarl behind me, too low to be a coyote or my dog, and too dog-like to be a bear. I, of course, checked my dog first and noticed her cowering away, but not making a noise. Looking to see what she was cowering from, I noticed a black mass, akin to a giant dog, think St. Bernard but bigger, across the creek. Nope, out of there. I left my lantern and tools behind and ran home as fast as I could, with my dog running beside me. As soon as I got home, I ran inside and attempted to find my parents. When I did, I launched myself near them and told them what happened. I don't think they believed me, as in the past I tended to make up stories about how I battled raccoons and wolves, but they comforted me anyways. While I was in bed, I heard a rustling in the tree line right outside my house. It may have just been the wind, but I heard underbrush cracking, so I think something was moving around. The next day, my father asked if I wanted to finish clearing the paths, as there was a bit left to do that I couldn't have done myself. I was a bit hesitant, but I agreed, thinking I would be safe with him with me. I, however, did not want my dog to come with us. When he told me to get my tools, I told him I had left them down where I was. He wasn't very happy about that. Walking down, I was extremely alert, looking around as much as I could. There was no evidence that anything large was anywhere near the path, and the path itself was only big enough for a single file line, but I was still skeptical. When we reached the location where my tools were, we noticed quite quickly that my lantern was completely destroyed, something which my father was furious about as it had cost at least $100. My tools were fine, however, so he wasn't as upset as he could have been. Working for the next few hours, we finished everything and more, leaving the next few months open to doing whatever, so long as there is no damage from heavy rainfall or snow. Before we headed back, nature called for my father, and he wandered out of sight. He must have gone a ways away because it took him several minutes to go and come back. But when he did, he was running. Urging me to grab my tools and run, he did the same. Concerned as all hell, I asked him what was wrong. He didn't answer me and instead looked around anxiously. I did the same. As soon as we were packed up, we ran. We were a good 5 miles away from home, however, so we were running a while. As we were running, I kept hearing things break behind us. Not like the occasional twig snap. I mean full-on terrifying lost shit. When I looked to see what was doing it, I nearly froze in fear. What I saw was as large as the mass I saw the night before, and it may well have been. However, because it was lighter out, I could discern its details. It was almost completely black, with dark red patches covering it randomly. Its face was akin to a dog's, and the rest of it was like a bear, the paws especially. When it picked them up, they looked like knives. Its ears were long and stood up. I did not see its teeth. As we neared home, the sound of braking ceased, though we did not slow down by any means. When we got into the house, my father locked all the doors and collapsed onto the couch from exhaustion. I did the same, but I recovered more quickly, being younger and a bit more fit. As I looked out the window, I did not see the creature, but I was still afraid of the woods, and was for the next few days. My father was too, eventually putting up a steel fence around the perimeter of the tree line, and a gate at the entrance to the path which he locked. My mother was not happy at all about this, but it gave me and my father some comfort, and so her opposition went away quickly. Over the next few weeks, my fear of the woods subsided. My father, however, was still afraid, and over the next few months I kept hearing him talk about not having enough money to keep paying for the house and wanting us to move. I, however, believe he wanted to move because he was still afraid. Eventually he left, and he and my mother got a divorce. He occasionally returned to the house to check the fence and the lock on the gate, but my mother quickly got tired of this and got a restraining order against him. I haven't seen nor heard of the creature since the night we ran from it, but recently I've started to hear the fence creak, so I'm starting to feel fear of it again.
Be me. Hanging out in the woods at night, stumble on what looks like an abandoned campsite. Tents are shredded, trash is lying around everywhere. I remember thinking that it was weird that people were camping this far into the woods. I was only a few miles in, but people cook meth and shit out here. Decide to look around the campsite some more. Spend a while trying to think of a rational explanation as to what could have shredded the tents and trashed the campsite so badly. Just as I'm about to leave, I hear something walk up behind me. Turn around, nothing. Start walking away from the campsite. Hear the footsteps again. They were different this time, more like stomping. Turn around again. Absolutely goddamn nothing. Pick up the pace a little. If one of the meth cooks was trying to scare me, I definitely got the message. Walk about a mile, then shit got real spoopy. Hear footsteps again, but this time whatever the hell was behind me was sprinting fast. Start running, but the thing was keeping pace with me pretty easily. At one point it got so close I swore I felt its breath on me. Get out of the woods after what seems like hours of running. The thing stops dead in its tracks, like it didn't even slow down at first, it just stopped. Didn't get a very good look at it, but I saw its silhouette. The thing looked skinnier than the pictures of concentration camp survivors that I had seen, and had legs that were longer than the rest of its body. Shine my flashlight on it, which I really wish I wouldn't have. The thing didn't have a mouth, just a mouth painted on with what I assumed was blood. Same thing with the eyes. Run into my house, lock it up tight, sleep in my bathtub with my shotgun at my side all night. I went back to that campsite the next day and nothing was there. Not nothing as in the campsite had been cleaned up. Nothing as in it looked like nothing had ever been there to begin with. Screw this state.
This is a legit personal story. Camping in mountains in California east of Bakersfield. Few of the group go hiking around an old gold mine. Abandoned car with 10,000 bullet holes. Ancient rusty mining equipment. Huge solid steel double door over the mine entrance. Huge but normal padlock keeping it shut. Bullet dings in the door. clearly not massively thick. Few bullet holes go all the way through. They're coming out, not going in. Weird. Climb up on top of what we are now dubbing the door. Minor collapse has left a crack through which to see the inside of the cave. Can barely make out what looks like a table. Neat enough? Let's bring the rest of the crew here later. Evening. Full group, kids and shit. Jeep over to the door. Huh. Could swear there were only like 5 holes in that door. Now there's dozens, all coming out from inside. Some of the kids climb up top, shine flashlights through the crack. Hey, there's a table and chairs in there. All 3 flashlights they have go out at the same moment. Everybody kind of weirded out. Kids climb back down, replace batteries. Nope, bulbs are burned out. I grab the massive halogen spotlight and climb up. Shine it inside. Round wooden table, 4 wooden chairs. Can't see very far past even with the huge light. Spotlight goes out. No way. Screw with the switch. Try to see if the filament broke. Look back into the crack. It's not complete nightfall yet. See 4 pairs of yellow-orange eyes looking back at me from what seems to be the positions of the 4 chairs. Shit. Run like a coward. As soon as I get back down in front of the door, the spotlight comes back on. Say I've had enough of that shit and head back to camp alone while people make fun of me. Not long back in camp, the rest of the group arrives. A few of the other adults climbed up with the spotlight and 4 other normal flashlights. Saw the furniture, but didn't see the eyes because they didn't stick around when all 5 of their lights went out. While climbing down, they heard what sounded like a gunshot from behind the door. The regular old flashlights had their bulbs burned out. The spotlight worked again when away from the door. The door is now an instant legend among our group. Next year, same camping trip, mostly the same huge group. Let's go see the door. Why, that seems like such a fine idea. Can't find it. Definitely the same area. There's ancient rusted mining machinery. There's the shot-up old car. No door. In the exact area where we all remember it is a rocky hillside. Making a stop at the forest ranger station for water and asking about it. I think I know the mine you're talking about, but it never had a mine shaft. It was a sluice operation. And we what for the rest of our lives?
I grew up in Moodus, Connecticut, and here is my your mileage may vary spoopy childhood experience. For some backstory, the town of Moodus was literally founded on land that the Pequot, Mohegan, and Narragansett tribes considered to be cursed and actively inhabited by an evil deity, and the town's name comes from Machimudus, which means place of evil noises. I really don't know what we expected. Anyway, so when I was about 8, my family acquired a half-built house way up in the forest and mountains of Moodus. The construction company that had started the house had gone bankrupt in the middle of construction, and the house had sat unfinished for several years. When we began work on the house, we noticed there was a really unsettling amount of dead wildlife in it. The unfinished floors were covered in layers of plastic sheets and shipping paper from the old construction crew, and between the layers of debris we'd find squirrels, birds, raccoons, foxes and such in various stages of decay. My father had fixed up similar abandoned properties in the past, but he had never seen such a ridiculous volume of dead squatter animals. So constriction went more or less as planned, though both my family and a good number of the workers would commonly see something in the corner of our eye when outside alone. It was always a dark object, roughly the size of a large dog, that jolted along the perimeter of the forest. Towards the end of the construction, we drilled out a new well for the house because the first well that was drilled was left uncovered, unmarked, unfinished, and one of the surveyors fell into it and was seriously injured. When we re-drilled the well, one of the people who drilled it was decapitated on his next job in a freak accident involving the power lift on the back of a truck. I don't have more details on it than that. We had a serious iron problem with the water and went through like 4 different water filters that couldn't fix the problem. Every tech and filter representative was confused as to why the filters weren't working. The water would run a rusty orange-red and stained our bathtubs and toilets orange. During our last 6 months with the house, we finally found a filter that fixed the iron problem, and our water well cap was struck by lightning a week later, and it fried the new filtration system. My father was a depressed alcoholic that was in an accident years before which ruptured discs in his spine, and it severely restricted his ability to move. From his alcoholism, he died on the property from a hemorrhaged ulcer. He drowned in his own blood, and from the medics trying to resuscitate him, he left a pool of blood on the carpet of our living room that we couldn't wash out. Even after all this shit, the last straw was, I had a super loopy friend, and her cult-tier mom refused to let her on the property. They only came over to offer their sympathies after my dad died, and her mother said a little prayer in what was, I swear to God, tongues. The front door was attached to our living room, and to the immediate right was the staircase to go upstairs. 3 lights were on in this little area. When Crazy Mom said her little prayer, all 3 of the lights blew out. I could settle for everything just being life and bad luck, but the last bit still shakes me to my core when I think about it. We moved very shortly after that, and as far as I know, the house has gone through at least 3 other owners since. We've all been curse-free since, though, so there's that. Fun bonus. From the 2nd floor, we could see a distant radio tower far off into the forest. It was really, really far off. When my father had just bought the property, he was excited because the lot was acres and acres of forest, and he was an avid hunter. He and one of his friends went out surveying/hunting for a week. They trekked straight across and actually found the radio tower. The tower was located in a large vacant field full of golden wheat with a collapsed barn. My father said there were what appeared to be horse remains in the barn, but Ideck man. The radio tower was rusted out, the tiny attached station was abandoned and falling apart, and they didn't know how the tower was seemingly still operating. There were no visible roads leading to this overgrown field, and they were surrounded by dense forest on all sides.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.